بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So inshallah we have we are very happy that we restarted the halaqah last Friday, and I'm sure those of you who were here last Friday enjoyed the first week after Ramadan, and when we had visiting Sheikh from New Jersey, and inshallah today it will be me who will be giving the lecture, and inshallah next week and the week and following weeks we will have speakers from outside of our masjid, inshallah. So today, the topic today is the importance for the Muslims to think and contemplate. So the topic is the importance of contemplation and thinking. So contemplation and thinking means that you look around you, you look at everything that Allah has created, and there are lessons in that. But if you didn't think, and if you did not use your intellect and think about it, you will not know what those lessons are. You will not know what the ayat are that are present. And you should be drawing lessons from those things. So all Muslims need to think. We all know that sometimes that people might say, especially non-Muslims, people who follow other religions, they sometimes tell you, you have to follow things by faith, right? The person who's the leader of the group tells you, do it, just do it. Don't think about it. You should not think about it. In Islam, that's not the case. But I also have to mention, actually, there are some Muslims who act like that. There are some groups of Muslims who act like cults. They have a leader, and they have a hierarchy, and you're supposed to take their order. You're supposed to follow what the leader says. Right? But Islamically, that's not correct. Why? Because we follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Quran He gave us. That's what we follow. And we follow His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But other than that, we don't have to follow. We're not required to follow anybody else. We listen to somebody else if they are telling the truth. If they are telling us things that are based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then we listen to that person and we respect their opinion. But if somebody comes to you and tells you things that you cannot even understand, you don't even know what he's talking about, and they tell you, listen, don't go against what I'm telling you. Just follow me. Don't follow them. You don't have to follow them. You have to ask them questions. You are telling me this, show me where it is in the Quran. That's the question you have to ask. Show me where this is written in the Quran, and where is this in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If the person cannot show you any of those, then you don't have to follow. So we are not allowed to have blind following in Islam. Blind following is not allowed. And when you read the Quran, you will see in many, many places of the Quran, Allah telling us to think. Right? In many places of the Quran, Allah is telling us to think, to use our intellect. So you will see in the Quran, لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Right? Many, many places, many ayat end with that. Allah gives us a lesson and gives us a message in the Quran, and that message ends with لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, those who think. And you will find other places of the Quran, in many places of the Quran, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, those who use their mind. They use their intellect, right? So in Islam, is it prohibited to use your intellect, or is it prohibited to think? Like some Muslims might think that's the case. No, you have to think, and you have to use your intellect. How else are you going to recognize Allah? You look around you, and when you see how Allah created the earth, and how Allah created the heavens and the stars and the sun, the day and night. You look at the trees. You look at the trees and how they grow, how many different types of trees there are, how many of them have fruits, and some of them have no fruits. Some trees grow in places that are very harsh, like the palm tree. They grow in places that are very hot, desert. It hardly rains and it's a desert and it's so hot. But then it grows fruits, the dates, that are very sweet, right? And you have some other trees that look very pretty, and they grow in places that have a lot of water. And the fruits they grow are very sweet. I mean, they look good and sweet. But when you eat them, they are not sweet. They are bitter. They are very bitter. And some of them may be even poisonous, right? So you cannot assume a tree looks pretty, that it's food, right? It might be poisonous. So all these things, there are lessons in all these things. When you read in the Quran, you will see all these lessons given to us, all these similitudes and parables. There are many parables and similitudes in the Quran. And all of these teach you things. One example of that would be your own selves. Allah tells us, look around, but then also look at your own self. When you look at your own self, and you see how your body functions, how your eyes see, how your brain works, how your legs walk, how your skin feels things. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And then you will know that only Allah can create those things. No human, no scientist, nobody can create those things. There are many other lessons in the Quran that you see that Allah tells us, pay attention. Pay attention to those things. Even traveling in Islam, traveling is also encouraged. But traveling for traveling's sake, like for example, I'm mentioning the traveling part because in this country, people make those things very important, right? You travel, you're supposed to take a vacation, right? You're supposed to take a summer vacation or a family vacation. And then you're supposed to go to the mountains, or you're supposed to go to the desert, or you're supposed to go to the ocean, or you're supposed to travel to Africa and go to the safari, or you go to Europe and look at the history and the old buildings. That's what people say. But then what lessons do they draw from it? Nothing. They don't draw useful lessons. If you talk to the non-Muslims, and many of the Muslims who are ignorant, and ask them, you traveled to Europe, and you went to old cities, you went to Egypt, and you looked at the pyramids, and you looked at the other things that the pharaohs left behind. What did you learn? They say, oh, it was beautiful, and it was awe-inspiring. That's what they said, right? This was awe-inspiring. What kind of awe did it inspire? And they said, what are you talking about? I said, you said it's awe-inspiring. What kind of awe did it inspire? They cannot answer. It's awe-inspiring because it makes you recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made all these things. The mountains or the ocean that you are enjoying. When you go to Egypt and you look at the pharaohs and the pyramids, it's a lesson for us. These people existed and they were so powerful, and at one point they thought that they owned this world. Right? Pharaoh himself actually thought that he's some kind of god. Right? He thought he was the Lord of the universe. He said, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. He said to the people, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. He thought he was the Lord of the universe. But then where is he now? They have his mummy, right? His mummy is there somewhere and so ugly when you look at his mummy, right? And look where he is now. And the pyramids, all these other pharaohs who built all these pyramids, where are they now? They're gone. They're finished. So there's a lesson there. So as a Muslim, you're supposed to think about those things. When you look at the pyramids, that's what you should think. But you should not destroy them. I'm mentioning this because some Muslims think that if there are things that are left over from non-Muslims before us, we should eliminate and destroy it. Like the Taliban were doing in Afghanistan, right? They did destroy statues of Buddha that were very big. They were huge, actually. They were like 10 floors, higher than 10 floors of a building. That's how big those Buddhas were. But they shouldn't have destroyed. Why do I say they shouldn't destroy? Some people may agree with that. But now we're talking about thinking, right? Muslims should think before they do anything, right? You have to make tafakkur. You have to think before you do anything. The first question, if you think, and not follow just your emotions, would be, you think the people who are there in Afghanistan are smarter than the Sahaba's children? No. The Sahaba's children, we all know, went to Afghanistan, right? They were the ones who spread Islam. And those children's children. And we all know that area of Afghanistan and Uzbekistan is where the greatest scholars of Islam came from. Like Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. Where did they come from? They came from that region. They were not Arabs. They came from that area, right? Do you think the Taliban knows more Islam than those people? No. And these people didn't destroy. Why didn't they destroy? Does anybody in Afghanistan follow the Buddhist religion? No. Did anybody in Afghanistan go to these idols and worship? No. No one worships. Everybody in Afghanistan, more or less, is a Muslim. Nobody worships those things. We're supposed to keep them as a lesson to the people. They have been there before Islam. And the early Muslims, the early generation of Muslims who really understood their religion did not destroy it. Somebody else might argue, oh, it was destroyed because it was the shape of a person, right? It was the shape of a person. So they might argue that if something is a sculpture, some kind of a sculpture is built and is in the shape of a human or an animal, we cannot have it, we're supposed to destroy it. That's false. Why do I say that? For example, Egypt is a good example. In Egypt, you have the Sphinx, right? The Sphinx, where you enter the pyramids, they have this huge structure. They have this huge thing that looks like a lion, but the head is a human, right? It's a human head, a human face, the Sphinx, right? And the rest is a body of a lion, and it's sitting. And it's huge, it's bigger than this building. And it's sitting there. And guess who ruled Egypt? The Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Who was the first governor of Egypt? From the Sahaba, who? Amr ibn As, right? You think the people, our generation, like people like me, you think I know better than Amr ibn As? No. And the other Sahaba who were there, right? They saw those things. They built Cairo, actually. And you know the Sphinx and some of the pyramids of Giza are part of Cairo now, right? Muslims actually built Cairo. Cairo did not exist before Islam. They built Cairo. But why didn't they destroy those things? How come they didn't destroy those things? So now you hear some crazy groups of Muslims who are saying we should destroy those things. They are wrong. The Sahaba didn't destroy it, so you cannot destroy it, I cannot destroy it, because we don't know better than them. They knew better, they understood. Ismail? Is that Ismail or Ishaq? Ishaq. You guys separate, right? Separate, like each one sit different way. Inshallah. So, split. Abdul Kareem. So, those people are not thinking, right? We're supposed to think, right? You're supposed to think. Why? Because Allah encourages us to travel to those places and look at what happened to the people before us, right? We're supposed to look at what happened to the people before us. أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَتَكُونُ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يعقلون بها أو آذان يسمعون بها فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. Like this ayah is very important. So Allah tells us in this ayah, don't the people go around walking on the earth? Don't they travel? Why don't they journey? Right? Don't they journey around the earth? Right? And allow their hearts and their ears to hear. Allow their hearts to gain something from the travel. Why don't they? It's a question that doesn't need an answer, right? This is a rhetorical question. It doesn't need an answer. Why don't they travel the earth and allow their hearts to gain some insight from what they see and allow their ears to hear? the sounds and the things that are there, right? But it's not their hearts. It's not their eyes that became blind. Allah tells us in this ayah, it's not their eyes that became blind, but it's the hearts that are inside their chests that became blind. It's the heart that became blind, because the heart can become blind. The person has eyes, they are looking at things. They have ears, they can listen to things. But the heart doesn't receive. The heart doesn't receive anything. So they don't go and gain any wisdom from what they see. So traveling is very important. Early Muslims understood this. Like early Muslims understood. They used to travel to places and notice what's going on in those places. And they used to write it down. That's why we have people like Ibn Battuta, right, who was very famous. He's very famous for his writings. He went to almost anywhere that humans knew at that time. Everywhere. He traveled all over the world. Right? And he took notes of what was happening. And there were many other Muslims who did the same thing. They used to notice things and look at things. It's the same reason why Muslims developed science. Same reason. Why? Because they start thinking of the Quran. When they read something in the Quran, and the Quran encourages them to look around them, look around you and take a lesson. Then they try to understand what's around them. They try to study the plants. They try to study the animals. They try to study the human body, right? And they created medicines for humans. Why? Because the Quran encourages them to study those things. But sadly, Muslims today do not do those things. When they read the Quran, usually when we read the Quran, we just read it. It doesn't make us think. The Quran should make us think and should encourage us to learn more and understand. So what we do now is, especially living in this country, we are becoming like everybody else in this country. Like when you go to school, you go to school. And that's where you're supposed to learn science and math and those things, right? But we have a hard time connecting that to our religion. And people think that you should not connect those things. Don't connect those things. Just separate them. Keep them separate, right? No, you're not supposed to separate them. Keep them together. You have to look at what's going on around you. When you are in a classroom and you are studying science, think about the science. How Allah created certain things. And think about it. Like one of the things that the Quran always repeats all the time is you're supposed to think of the whole creation. Right? The whole creation you're supposed to think about. And the whole creation means like وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, how the day and the night change each other. How does the day and the night change each other? That helps you understand how the planets and the stars move. So you're supposed to think about that. وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِنْ رِزْقٍ. You're supposed to think about the rizq and the water that Allah sends down from the heavens. فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. And Allah has made the earth alive after it died. وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ آيَاتٌ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. And how the winds change. And these are ayat for people who use their intellect, right? Ayatun liqawmin ya'qilun. People who use their mind, who think. This is a lesson only for those who think. So in this short ayah, you have everything, like the succession of the day and the night, right? The water that comes down from the earth, from the sky to the earth, and makes the earth alive. So when you really think about it, think about the water that's coming from the clouds and how it creates living things. We all live because of that. If there is no rain coming, we will all die. All animals, all humans, all plants, everything will die without it. So when you think about it, you will realize actually how fragile our life is and how temporary it is. It tells you how temporary our life is. And what does that do? After you think of it as a temporary thing, it should make you recognize the akhirah. And you should focus more on the akhirah. Because it teaches you a lesson that this is just temporary. Don't put all your effort into this life. In another ayah, وَهُوَ الَّذِي مَدَّ الْأَرْضَ وَجَعَلَ فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ. Allah is the one who made the earth white. Allah has made the earth white for us. And He planted mountains into it. He planted mountains into it. وَأَنْهَارًا and rivers. وَمِن كُلِّ ثَمَرَاتٍ and all kinds of fruits. جَعَلَ فِيهَا زَوْجَيْنِ اثْنَيْنِ and He made all these fruits, all these things, two pairs. Allah made those things in pairs. زَوْجَيْنِ اثْنَيْنِ, pairs. يُغْشِي اللَّيْلَ النَّهَارِ Allah has covered the night with the day. The night takes over the day. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ الْآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ all these things are lessons for those who think. It's only good for those people who think. Because looking at that, like you're looking at the power of Allah. Where do you see the power of Allah? How the day takes over the night. Where do you see Allah's power? How the mountains are created and how this earth is made white for us to live in. And you see Allah's power on how the trees grow fruits. That's where you see and recognize Allah's power. In another ayah, Allah says, هو الذي يسيركم في البر والبحر حتى إذا كنتم في الفلك وجرين بهم بريح طيبة وفرحوا بها. So in this ayah, Allah is describing that people take a boat or a ship. They are in a ship. And the ship is loaded with people and other goods. And it's following a good wind. People are enjoying it. And it makes them very happy that they have a good wind that pushes them into the direction where they are going. جاءتها ريح عاصف وجاءهم الموج من كل مكان. Then all of a sudden, as they were happy with this movement and this nice wind, all of a sudden things change. The winds become very strong. Storms come. And then the waves of the ocean rise very, very high. وَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ أُحِيطَ بِهِمْ and they know, actually, they will realize that actually they are coming, they are in trouble. دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. When that happens, that's when everybody recognizes they have to pray to Allah. They start praying to Allah. Those people did not believe in Allah. They were arrogant people who were rejecting Allah before. But now, all of a sudden, when they see death surrounding them, death is surrounding them, they realize they need Allah. So now they beg Allah. Do they only pray to Allah? No. مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They make everything pure for Allah, sincere. They forget their humans they were worshipping before. They forget the idol. They forget the false gods, everything. They forget everything. They realize Allah is the only one who can save them. Only in that moment. But Allah is so merciful. Even though these people were worshipping idols and they were worshipping humans and they were worshipping other things that did not create them, Allah is so merciful, Allah saves them. And what do they say when they are begging Allah? لَإِنْ أَنْجَيْتَ مِنْ هَذِهِ لَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. If you save us from this difficulty, we will become one of those who are thankful to you, O Allah. They say this in a sincere manner. Their hearts are filled with sincerity. Right? فَلَمَّا أَنْجَاهُمْ إِذَا هُمْ يَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. And as soon as Allah saves them, and they come out, they go back to their old ways. And they are doing wrong things in this earth. And those people are causing outrageous things on earth. Right? They start cheating, they start lying, they start killing people, they start doing all kinds of bad things. They commit all kinds of crimes. But before they promised, oh Allah, if you save us from this, we will become one of those who are thankful to you. And what happened? All of a sudden they went back to what they were. But this, when you look at that example that Allah gives us in the Quran, we should be thinking about it very hard. And we should learn that we should make ikhlas. We should have ikhlas all the time, day and night. Whether we are happy or sad, we should have ikhlas. We should have sincerity to Allah. We should Only worship Allah all the time. Ikhlas actually means that you purify everything for the sake of Allah. Like you eliminate everything else. You do things only for the sake of Allah. That's what ikhlas is. Right? You single out Allah. Ikhlas is singling out only Allah. You single out your prayers only for Allah. You don't say Allah and this and this. Right? Otherwise that becomes shirk. So when you think, like when you see this ayah in the Quran, you should think hard. And you should learn how to have ikhlas. And in another ayah, many ayahs of the Quran, Allah describes how the rain comes down. Right? And when the rain comes down, then all of a sudden the trees come out, and the bushes, and the plants, and everything turns green and beautiful. The farmers do their farms. The farmers, they grow their food. And then they are very happy when the farms come out. And then what happens after a month or two? Everything turns yellow again. Everything turns yellow, and you can see it. Here we are in Minnesota, actually, it's a good example. When spring comes, it starts raining. And when it rains, you see all the trees becoming green very quickly. And you see flowers coming out everywhere. All of a sudden, everything is beautiful. And everything is alive. And then now, winter is beginning to come. Fall, very soon. All the plants, all the leaves on the plants will turn yellow and brown and red. And the winds will pick up and they will all fall. And then when they all fall, the trees look dead. They are not green anymore. By just looking at this, it should remind you of the life of this world. The life of this world is very similar to that. You are alive, you are strong, you are very healthy, then you die. And then when you die, Allah brings you back for the day of judgment. It's the same thing. It looks exactly the same thing. So we have to think about those things that are around us. In another ayah of the Quran, that Allah encourages us to think and contemplate. Because when you see the stars, for example, when you go outside and look at the stars, you should contemplate. You should not just look at them because they're pretty. You look at them because there is lesson in them. There is a lesson in the stars. And you should contemplate and think about who created those stars and how wonderful they are. And it should raise your belief in Allah. And it should strengthen your iman. And when your iman gets stronger, you have taqwa. And when you have taqwa, you have ikhlas. Ikhlas. You will only worship Allah. You will never worship anybody else. But people might think, oh, by looking at the stars and the sun and the moon, how is that going to create a strong iman? It does. Try it. You will find out. Like, look at the stars and think about it. And even non-Muslims go outside to the desert or they climb the mountains and they have observatories. They have huge observatories with big telescopes that they use to look at the stars. And they look at the planets. There are thousands of them actually. That's what they do all the time. Every day, 8 hours, 10 hours at night. That's what they do. They look at those things. But do they draw any lesson from it? No. When you talk to them and you say, oh, you look at the stars all the time. Sometimes, families with their children travel to the desert in Arizona or in Nevada to look at the stars and to look at the meteors, those falling stars. Sometimes there's a shower of meteors. They go there and look for them. And they travel all the way. And every once in a while you hear there's eclipse, right? And they announce it on television, they announce it on the radios, and people go and travel. Sometimes they buy tickets. If the eclipse is in South America, they fly to South America to experience the eclipse. But then when they are asked on the television or the radio, how was it? They say, oh, it was so beautiful. It was awe-inspiring, right? But we Muslims, no, we draw another lesson. We are not like that. We draw some other lessons from it. And in ayah in the Quran, Allah says, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. The creation of the heavens and the earth. The creation, the whole creation. The heavens and the earth, that means everything. The whole creation, the creation of the heavens and the earth. And the succession وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. The succession of day and night. How the day comes and then the night follows all the time. لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. There are lessons for those who have deep insight. People with deep insight who can deeply think. Ulul al-albab actually are deep thinkers. There's a lesson for them. People who don't know how to think will not draw any lesson from them. الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. Those who are ulul albab, who are deep thinkers, who are they? They are the ones who remember Allah when they are sitting, and when they are standing, and when they are laying down. They are the ulul albab. The ones who are deep thinkers are the ones who remember Allah when they are standing, when they are sitting, and when they are laying down. That means they remember Allah all the time, except when they are sleeping. When they are laying down, they remember Allah. Only when they fall asleep, then they are not under control. Right? So they forget. Then that's the only time they don't remember. All the time when they are awake, while they are sitting or standing or laying down, they remember Allah. وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. And their sides, وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And they think. Those people, what they do? Yet the ulul albab, those with the deep insight, وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. They think of the creation of the heavens and the earth. They think, they contemplate, and they focus on the creation of the heavens and the earth. And when they do that, they focus and look at the stars, they look at the planets, they look at the mountains, they look at the trees, they look at the clouds, they look at how plants grow and the food, they look at themselves, how their body works, they look at the animals. When they see all these things, they draw a good lesson from that Allah created all these things, and Allah created them for us to learn from, and for us to realize that Allah exists, and there will be a day of judgment. That's the purpose for this whole thing. So, as a Muslim, you don't say when you look at those things, it's beautiful. You don't say that. What do you say? رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. You say, oh our Lord, you have not created all of this for no reason. Right? Allah has not created all this just playing a game. Right? رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. You have not created all this for nothing. Subhanak, glory be to you. فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Protect us from the punishment of the fire. So immediately you learn a lesson from this very quick. And the lesson is that Allah created this for a purpose. And you draw that lesson and you realize that there is a punishment in the day of judgment. So you ask Allah, protect us from the punishment. So we stand in awe of Allah. We don't stand in awe of the moon or the star. In awe, like when they say, oh, this is awe-inspiring. That's what the non-Muslims say, right? When you look at the planets and the stars, it's awe-inspiring. For us, what's awe-inspiring is when we think of Allah. Right? Only when we think of Allah, that's awe-inspiring. In another ayah, Allah says, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ. There is, in the earth, there are lessons. There are signs in the earth. But for who? Muqinin, lil-muqinin. The muqinin are those who have inner certainty. They have a strong certainty. They have no doubt. Right? The lessons in the earth are good only for those who have no doubt. If you have a doubt that Allah created anything or Allah exists, and you think some kind of idol or a person created the earth, or it happened by accident, like many people believe. If you believe that, then that lesson that you can find on the earth is useless for you. So, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ. Those who have inner certainty, they are certain of the creation that Allah has made. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And there are also lessons in themselves. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. They draw a lesson from inside them. Why? Because they look at their body and how Allah created them. أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Don't you then see? If you have to look. And in other ayat of the Quran, Allah tells us different things that we can draw lessons from and we can learn from. There are many other things. One of them is وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Here, like usually we may not pay attention. Allah is telling us there is a lesson and there is an ayah for you, a lesson, there is a sign for you that Allah has created for us mates. That you are a woman, you have a husband, and you are a husband, you are a man, you have a wife, right? So Allah has created spouses. Allah has created spouses for you. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. So you can take rest. Like you can rest with each other. You fill your lives together and you rest your life. So Allah didn't just make you get married, right? And left you like that. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And Allah has put between you, the husband and the wives, kindness and love. Allah has put love and kindness between you. Usually when people think of their husband or their wife, they don't think of this as an ayah. They don't think that this is a sign from Allah for us to recognize Allah, right? By you just getting married. If you get married, there is a lesson there. And it's Allah who created you for each other. And it's Allah who put the love between you and the mercy that you show to each other. It's Allah who put that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that. And what happens to people who do not remember Allah? What happens to them? The shaitan comes in, right? People who are married, who do not bring Allah into their life, what happens? The shaitan comes in. And when the shaitan comes in, does he put mawadda and rahmah between them? No. He puts hatred, right? Hatred and wickedness between them. They hate each other, they insult each other, they're always fighting, right? And sometimes they're separate, sometimes they come back together. Why? Because they allow the shaitan to come into their life. They start remembering Allah. They start thinking of Allah. They start remembering that Allah is the one who allowed them to marry each other, to feel at ease with each other. And it's Allah who put that mercy and love between them. And the next ayah, Allah says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. لِلْعَالَمِينَ. So there is an ayah, there is a lesson, there is a message for us in the creation of the heavens and the earth. And then the differences of our languages. So think about it, like the difference. How many languages are there in this world? How many languages we have? At least in Somalia, we're very lucky. We have one language, but many countries. Some people have. In India, I think they have like 600 something languages in India. There are more than 6,000 languages in this world, right? So the difference of language itself is a lesson. Sometimes you look at people who speak a language that you do not understand, and then you will be thinking, how can I talk to these people and explain to them who created them, right? And then you cannot do it because you don't speak their language. So when you think of that, it's something that it's a lesson. There is a lesson there that we should think about. And then what else is a lesson? The differences in our colors. Like people have different colors. Allah created people with different colors. If you bring 100 people, you might probably find 100 different colors, right? And it's not something that people, it's not what people use it for sometimes. Sometimes some people, especially in countries like in America, the color creates racism and separation of people and things like that. But for us, that's not what it does. When you realize the differences of color of people, it strengthens your iman and belief in Allah. And it shows you Allah's power and how Allah gave all these people different colors. And you appreciate their colors, right? Their color doesn't do anything. It doesn't make them better. And it doesn't make them a Muslim or non-Muslim. It doesn't make them closer to Allah or further from Allah. The color doesn't do that. The color, all it does, it gives us a lesson. It's a lesson for us. There is a message in the color for us to recognize that those people have all these colors because Allah decided to create them like that. And then those ayat end with Allah saying, "Inna fi dhalika la'ayatin lil'alamin." It's a lesson only for those who know, those who have knowledge. Right? So if you are ignorant and you keep yourself into ignorance, you don't read books, you don't study the Quran, you don't study the Hadith, you don't read other books, you don't learn history lessons, right? Then you are not alamin, you are not one of those who know. You are ignorant. You will not draw the right lessons from those things. You will draw the wrong lessons from those things. Because you will end up saying, oh, if somebody has a different color than mine, I'm better than that. That's what happens to people. Because they're so ignorant. Ignorance is what creates those things. There's even a lesson on when you think about it, on your sleep. Like Allah tells in the Quran, that there is a lesson in when you sleep. Right? So you draw a lesson from you sleeping and you waking up. And when you really think about it, it's amazing. Right? Sometimes we have to think about it. Like you sleep, what happens to you when you're sleeping? I cannot figure out. I think about it, but I don't have the answer. I cannot figure out what happens to me when I'm sleeping. It's something that's really miraculous. I'm not dead completely, but I'm not really alive. I don't even know what's going on, right? But I'm breathing, and sometimes I'm in a dream. And when I wake up, I dream. I remember the dreams, right? But then what happened to me? I don't know. I have no idea what happened to me. Did you ever think of that? That when you are sleeping, what happens to you? You don't know what happens to you, right? But Allah gave you that sleep, that you don't even know what happened to you, and made it a rest for you. You rest. Your mind calms down. Your whole body rests. All the toil and the hard work that you went through during the day, you went to school or you went to work, and you come and you sleep. When you wake up, you are fresh again. You are ready to go. How does that happen? How does that happen? Allah made that for us. I didn't make it. Scientists didn't make it. Right? People who claim they know everything, they don't know anything. If somebody loses their sleep, right, they will probably go crazy, right? So Allah made that sleep for us to rest. And when you think about, for example, the rain, in another ayat, Allah tells us that there are lessons for us and messages in when you look at the lightning and the thunder, and those, there is hope and there is fear in them, right? There is hope that it will rain and food will grow and we will have enough water. But then it's scary also at the same time, that the lightning might hit you and maybe it'll kill you. And in another ayah, that Allah tells us in actually several ayah, that when you look at the heavens, we are sitting in this earth, and then we look up, but then we don't see anything that's holding the heavens. So when you really think about it, right, you will recognize Allah's power. Who is holding those things? We are not holding it. NASA is not sending airplanes to hold it. Allah is holding it with His power. So there is a lesson there when you think about those things. And I will repeat again that thinking and contemplating, and here I'm not talking about, sometimes like people might read some philosophy books, right? And philosophy books, what they teach students is just fake arguments. They teach you a fake argument. One of their most famous arguments is what came first, the egg or the chicken, right? If you start thinking like that, you will get lost. And you will never reach any answer or any conclusion, right? If you say who came first, the chicken or the egg, right? It's an argument that's looking for trouble, right? Who cares who came first, right? What I care about is they're there, and Allah created them, right? And Allah made it easy for us to deal with them and eat and enjoy their meat and the egg itself, right? I don't care how they came by. I don't care who came first. I care about their existence, right? So we don't want to get into philosophical arguments. Philosophical arguments are useless. And this happens to some Muslims, so don't think that this does not happen to some Muslims. Because you all know that in the old days, some Muslims tried to figure out certain things in the Quran that nobody can understand, right? Like when Allah says, Allah or Sami'un Basir or something, or things like that, right? Or istawa ala al-arsh. They try to figure out how that happens, right? Can you figure it out? No. And you will never know. You can never figure those things out, right? ثم استوى على العرش. How can you figure that out? This is something beyond human understanding. Allah and how Allah does things is metaphysical, right? It's part of the metaphysical. The metaphysical is what is beyond human understanding and human intellect. I'm only required to understand what my mind is capable of, right? So what I need to do is, and you need to do, is think about the creation and look at it and look at yourself, how your body works. Look at the animals. Look at all these animals with different colors. Allah tells us in the Quran actually to look at the bee, right? In Surah An-Nahl, right? Look at the bee. It's strange, right? Usually you think if somebody eats something, what are they eating? Something good, right? The humans, they eat good things, right? But then when you go to the bathroom, the waste comes out, right? And the waste is smelly and bad. But the bee goes to eat things. And the waste that comes out of the bee is what? Honey, right? Honey is the waste. That when the bee goes to the bathroom, it's honey, right? There's a lesson there, think about it. And Allah tells us in the Quran to think about that, right? And the honey is what? What Allah tells us in the Quran, in the honey? That it tastes good and it's cure, right? It cures diseases, right? Muslims knew this 1400 years ago, more than 1400 years ago, that honey is a cure, right? Non-Muslims learned the last 20 or 30 years that honey is cure and it cures disease. They didn't know that. We didn't know this because we're so smart. We know this because Allah told us in the Quran, right? And Allah gives us all kinds of examples in the Quran that we need to think about. Like there's a whole surah of the Quran named after the ant, right? Surah An-Nahl, right? The ant. And you see in that surah the ant talking. The ants are talking to each other. They have their own language, right? We don't understand their language. But Allah allowed Prophet Sulaiman to understand their language, right? Prophet Sulaiman understood their language. I don't understand their language. There is a lesson in there. Actually, there is a good lesson in the ant and the bees, for Somalis especially. Because when you look at how they work together, right? You see how the bees and ants work together. The bees have a queen, right? And they're organized into groups, and each group know exactly what they're doing, right? The ants are the same thing. They build the whole city. And they're so tiny, but then you see them carrying a lizard, right? Isn't that amazing? They are so small. The lizard is hundreds of times bigger than they are, right? So when you look at that, what lesson do you draw? The first lesson is how Allah created them and how Allah made them understand and do those things. And the other lesson for me personally would be that I can do things that are bigger than me, right? I can do things that are bigger than, if we work together, we can do many things, right? That seem impossible. So we have to think. And it's very important that we think and draw lessons from our life and from what surrounds us. And it's very important that it leads us to understanding on who created us. And of that thinking, if it leads you somewhere else, then it's not a good thing. It should lead you to recognize who created you, to begin with. And it should lead you to understand how the akhirah will happen. By just looking at how plants grow and how they die, it's a sign and a lesson for us to recognize how we will die and how we will be brought back in the day of judgment, right? A good example of that is trees. You have a desert, rain comes down and it's green all of a sudden. And then after 1 month, it's a desert again, right? That's how we will be brought back. We will come back in the day of judgment. And the same thing goes for all other lessons, right? So inshallah we will stop there. And I will repeat again what we announced that tomorrow, after Asr prayer, we will have Captain Yusuf Yi coming. He's here actually in the Twin Cities area. And he will give a lecture here tomorrow, inshallah, to the kids and to the youth and everybody else. and everyone should come and tell your friends and everybody that you know. It's Saturday, so we all have days off, so we should take advantage of the class, inshallah. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله. So if any of you have a comment? What time is that?
33.
33. So we have 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So if anyone has a question or a comment, any question, any comment? Good. So that means the lecture was either too boring or I really explained things very well. I don't know which one, but I will leave it there.